why we love this church, why we love church, and what type of church do we want to be, what type of church do we want to reflect. And last week we talked about how to be a place where burdens can be lifted, and of course the Lord really started working on me to share that because of what we've seen and what we've seen over not only the last couple of weeks, but what we've seen over really the last couple of years. If you think about what it's been like since 2020, there's a lot of burdens that have been created from whether it's what happened during Rona or elections or just where our country is as a whole. And so I've been thinking about, a place where our burdens can come and be lifted, and that's why we come, and that's why we have prayer requests. That's why we want to be a place for all, that if you have to share whatever that struggle is, that it is okay to share here, and know that this is a place that God, a place that you can come and open up. And so we need to be a place that does that. And, I started thinking more as, we talked about inviting youth and teenagers to this week, and because I started thinking about today, I want to be a place where we build each other up. I want to be a place where if you come to Calvary Baptist, it is a place that you're going to be built up, whether it's through worship, whether it's through the preaching of the word, or whether it's, we'll talk about it more in a moment with Sunday school and all the things, but a place that you build it up. And when I started thinking about why my emphasis on students is, I think a lot of times some of the meanest things that are said are at school. Some of the meanest things that are said are at school. And it used to be high school, it used to be junior high, but we even see it today because I think some of our kids, the stuff they see, the stuff they watch, they say it to their friends. Or they say it to people that aren't like them. But as I started thinking more about students, sometimes adults, we're not much better. If they're not like us, we talk to them a certain way. If they don't do the things we like to do, we talk to them another way. There's a reason if you were to go to a school today, whether it's the size of Rotan or the size of Allen, Texas, you look in, you go to the lunchroom, you're going to have pockets of people. Lunchroom's going to be over here. You may have the football team here. You may have the engineering department or the band. That you see different folks. And when some people don't agree with the other, we don't jive and we don't build up. In my opinion, that's one of the biggest struggles we have today, is we don't build people up, and when we disagree, and if you don't hear anything else, then don't worry, we're going to get out on time. Our disagreement can never equal and turn into hate. Our disagreement can never equal and turn into hate. I don't agree 100% that a guy who becomes a girl should compete against girls. 100% don't believe that. Don't agree with it. Your granddaughters, your children should not compete. Yes, I know this is going on YouTube, but I don't hate. I can disagree, but when we disagree turns into hate, that's how things like Uvalde happen. That's how things like George Floyd happens. That's why you can disagree, but when your disagreement turns to hate, you build up nobody. And we cannot, and we're going to get to Scripture, I promise, and I may talk. But I don't care how you feel legislatively. If you tweak something legislatively on the left, or you tweak a little bit of legislatively on the right, it's not going to change the only thing that needs to be changed, and that is the heart. You can make a rule, you can change the speed limit from 75 to 80 and get somewhere faster. You can make gun laws different, you can make this law different, but until we allow God in the hearts of us to change our hearts, we can't expect things to be done that only God can do. And so this morning, as we start thinking about building people up and the role of us as adults and students, we've got a role. And in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, as a prisoner for the law, then I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body, one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God, and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. When I read that, to me, the answer is there is only one God who can take care of the issues that we have, and we must turn to Him. When we turn to other things and we try to get outside, anytime a government or a denomination steps outside of what God's will and God's call is in our lives, we normally stray away. Live a life worthy of the calling. Some of us don't think we have callings, but you do. And it says, be completely humble. When I see that and I think about humility, the humble part of that reminds me, when you start to be humble, you realize you're not in control. Be humble. Be gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity. You know what's interesting about this? He's talking to the church. When Paul writes this letter to Ephesus, he's not writing it to everybody. He's writing it to the church and saying, hey, church, you have a role as the body to make sure you live a life worthy of the calling. Your calling is to love God and make Him known. And the way we can do that is we will be humble and gentle and patient, bearing with one another. We do those things, we keep the unity. You know as I do, the town, the state, the country, and the world, not very unified. Very divided. And it's very important for us as Christians to make sure that we help keep that and do our part. Keep going. Verse 7. But to each of us, grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. This is why it says, when He ascended on high, He took many captives and gave gifts to His people. What does He ascended mean except that He also ascended to the lower earthly regions? He who descended, the very one who ascended higher than all the heavens in order to fill the whole universe. Verse 11. So Christ Himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip His people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. First thing there is, I'm glad. First, we all have a calling, and every single one of you are equipped. I am very thankful for the people in this church that are equipped. The Sunday school teachers, the worship leaders, Pat and Nikita leading us in worship, Vicki, Connie, Lawrence. We have a responsibility. I have a responsibility for us that are equipped with the talents that God has given us to help build up the church. So if you've got a talent, whether it's flowers, whether it's poetry, whether it's building, whatever it is, we are equipped to help build this place. And if we just say, well, I'm not equipped, I don't have any talents, it's not my role, you're listening to the wrong one. Because Satan's going to tell you you're not good. Satan's going to say your past isn't good, you have zero talents, you're not equipped. Every single one of you in here are equipped. And you've got to make sure you do your part to live a life worthy of the calling. Because what happens, now, the other part of that. Those who hear need to make sure you take what you get and use. Vicky, Connie, Lawrence, me, Pat, Nikita, we don't just come, hey, we don't prepare, we don't work, we don't study to say, hey, here's a lesson so we can check a box. And then we don't take what God gives us and use it. Be sure those who are equipped, you use, or that you, those that you get, how many words is this? Do what we say. No, I'm just kidding. But what you hear, be sure you take and let God use you. Because what happens when we don't stay equipped, look at verse 14. Then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching, by the cunning and craftiness of people in their difficult scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of Him who is the head, that is Christ. From Him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. If you don't equip and you don't grow, you end up being tossed like an infant back and forth. That's why it's important to continue to grow and equip yourself. I want to finish up. Verse 17. So I tell you this and insist on in the Lord that you must no longer live as Gentiles, doing their futility of their thinking. They are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. I think this is one of the biggest problems we have. Not a gun, not what other ends you want to go with, is we have a lot of hearts that are hardened. We have a lot of hearts that have turned off. We have a lot of hearts that are still searching. We have a lot of hearts that are still hurt. And the only way that happens, the only thing that needs to take place is a transplant. We know very well the only way a organ gets given to a transplant person, except sometimes a kidney, because I know somebody's given a kidney and they only have one. Somebody has to die. The great thing about the heart transplant today is that person that needed to die already did. The person that needed to conquer and provide the heart for that person that thinks they're not good enough, that person that is so hardened, that thinks their life isn't worthy, their life isn't worth it, that person's already died. And the heart is available. Because when we trust Jesus Christ, the transplant is, and it keeps on going in here, and it says, having lost all sensitivity, they've given themselves over to sensuality so as to indulge in every kind of impurity. They have given their full of greed. But he keeps on going, and Paul says, you were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, and to be made new in attitude and mind. The people that are hardened, and maybe you're here today, your heart's hard because you've been disgusted with church people, you've been disgusted with the hand you've been dealt, whatever it is. The only person that can provide you with that heart transplant has already died for you. It's available to you to put off your old self and to put on that new self, which is who Jesus Christ is. So it's my challenge for us today as Christians, and I know we ran along and all the things, and I think God does what He wants to do, which is awesome. We've got to be a place that are going to build people up. No matter who they are, no matter what they're going through. And in Colossians, Paul tells the church there to clothe yourselves with compassion, to clothe yourself with kindness. Sometimes we keep going back to the same stupid shirt that tells us and defines us who we are, our old self. We keep going back to that same pile of dirty clothes. And God says, put on what I've given you. Use the things that build up. And later on in Ephesians, he says, use words that build people up and benefit those who listen. That's our role, is to build people up and benefit those who listen. I guarantee it, there are people that are lost And in Uvalde, they're getting to experience who Jesus is. Tragedy doesn't have to happen for us to be drawn to Jesus. And so this morning, my challenge to us, and the reason I wanted to talk to kids, we see these shirts that say, be kind. It's a great step. There's going to be kids in your school you don't like. There's going to be kids in your school that drive you crazy. You know what? Adults, we have the same people. We have the same people that we disagree with. We have the same people we think they should fix their life. You know what? They think we should fix ours. So my challenge is, how can we build people up? Because the church has got to be a place that elevates people. And I close with this. You've got to get rid of the stuff that's there. I was driving in. Larry, I'm sure, has built plenty of houses. When you go to build a house, they don't just put the house where the trees are. They're pretty dumb. You try to put a house where the trees and all the junk is, it's going to be weird. You got to clear it out. You got to clear out and put the right foundation to build the house. For some of you, that's what you need to do. Rip out those trees. Rip out the junk that you have allowed Satan to define you, and let us build you up. Set the foundation of Jesus and let him build you up. And then we want to be a place that people get built. No matter what storm hits our house, we're going to be there to help them. No matter what storm hits me, I trust you're going to be there to help me. Because none of us are exempt from needing that old pep talk, that build-up message. So this morning, I don't know where you are. Maybe you need to start over. Maybe you need to accept Christ for the first time. Maybe you need to clean the trees out, the junk, whatever you want to call it, and say, God, build me up. But then I also want to challenge us to be a people that build up in our workplace, at our school. Because when we do that, people benefit those who listen. So let's stand. I know we're a little long on Pat play. Maybe you need to, whatever you need to do as Pat plays, you think, how am I building up the kingdom? How am I building up the church? What kind of student am I at school? What kind of coworker? What kind of friend? Better yet, what kind of enemy are you? What kind of enemy are you?